हेलो। हेलो।
हेलो।
हाँ, हेलो। एम आई
आवाज आ रही
ऑडिबल?
है? यस, ओके।
आवाज आ रही है।
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, yes, good morning. Yes,
Yes. So our next session speaker has joined.
okay.
So dear participants, our next speaker, Dr. Sabrimalai Manikandan sir, is taking the next session. And this session will be chaired by Dr. Saurabh Kumar Pandey. So I hand over the session to Saurabh. Over to you, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. And I would like to thank Professor Sabarimalai Maniknandan, sir, for giving his consent for this talk as an invited speaker. So I would like to introduce, sir, uh, Professor M. Sabarimalai Maniknandan received his engineering degree in electronics and communication engineering from Bhartiyar University, Coimbatore, and master's degree in microwave and optical engineering from Madurai Kamraj University, India, and PhD degree in cardiovascular signal processing from Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, IIT Guwahati. He was an assistant professor with Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham University, India. He was a chief engineer with the Advanced Technology Group Samsung India Electronics Private Limited, Noida. He is currently an assistant professor with the Biomedical System Laboratory, School of Electrical Sciences, IIT Bhubaneswar, India. He has published more than 70 research articles in reputed journals and conference proceedings. His area of interest includes signal and image processing, adaptive machine learning, Internet of Things, VLSI signal processing, machine learning architecture, application system development, healthcare monitoring system, audio and speech processing system for human machine interaction, biometric and data security for authentication and authorization, environmental monitoring system for ambient assisted living, UAV assisted IoT for smart surveillance system, and context and quality aware pattern learning networks for event recognition. Dr. Manik Nandan was a recipient of 2012 Outstanding Performance Award during his tenure at Samsung India Electronics Private Limited. He served as a reviewer for many reputed journals including IEEE, IET and elsewhere. So the title of the talk is Physiological Sounds Analysis Techniques for Edge Health Computing Systems. So over to you, sir.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, can you see my slide?
Yes, yes, sir. It is visible?
Okay, okay.
You
Is
can.
it full screen?
Yes, full screen mode you can.
Yes. Now it's okay.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. 1 minute. Yeah.
See,
Good afternoon to all. First
there
of
is
all,
one error box that is coming onto the screen.
what is that?
error.
No, it is not there. It is on your.
Can you see the presentation slide?
Yes,
Yes.
it's there.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So very good afternoon, all. First of all, I thank the coordinator for the invitations to deliver a talk in deep learning based speech processing on. Uh, yeah, speech processing tech for smart health and education system. Concept, recent trends, and key challenges. For these presentations, I'd like to highlight there are many challenges in the development of signal processing techniques, in particularly analysis and diagnosis of physiological sounds which are generated from the human body. So if you look at the recent trends in the healthcare systems, in particularly artificial intelligence powered Internet of Things, and then there is a platform is called edge computing platform and cloud computing platform. These two are combined to develop any wearable healthcare monitoring devices or portable healthcare monitoring devices. So in all these devices, false alarms and extracting the relevant biomarkers and reducing the energy consumptions of this type of battery powered wearable devices and portable devices and noises and artifacts detections are the major challenges. So if you want to develop accurate, reliable healthcare monitoring systems, even though we have some technologies, okay, for the Internet of Things and edge computing and cloud computing, but because of the resource constraints with the wearable and portable devices, energy consumption becomes one of the major challenging problems in addition to the identifying and reducing the false alarms of the different noises. So yes. So just to introduce a small introduction to biomedical signals, we know that biomedical signals contains many useful informations which will be used for both pathological and non-pathological applications, particularly diagnosis of cardiovascular diseases, or we can use the biomedical signals for extracting cryptographic keys and biometric authentications or emotional recognitions. So the biosignals shows different independent variables that we can see in the biosignals can be spatial and time space recordings from the different parts of the human body, and which highly required powerful signal processing tools because the biomedical signals are highly non-stationary signals, in particularly sounds which are produced by the human body. So why we gather this biosignals as per this textbooks of Professor Rangaraj Rangan? So one is the information gathering and diagnosis, monitoring and therapy and control. So now if you see the classification of biosignals based on the type of physical quantity or physical variable that are measured from the human body, we can classify a biomedical signals, electric biosignals, or we can say bioelectric signals, bioacoustic signals, biooptic signals, biomagnetic signals, biomechanical signals, biochemical signals, biothermal signals. So today we are going to see what are the challenges that are involved in the bioacoustic signals, in particularly cardiac sounds and snoring sounds, respiratory sounds, and crackles and other sounds. So look at the different body sounds, and some of the things are just for fun I have taken. You can see that there are different sounds can be captured from the human body. Out of this, heart sound, breath sound, or respiratory sounds, snoring sounds, bowel sound or abdominal sounds, creaky sound, joints or knee joint sounds, cough and speech, ringing ears. So these are the most important sounds which are used for clinical applications, or we can say pathological applications. So now if you see that how do you sense these type of signals from a human body? So by using different kinds of sensors. Now by understanding application scenarios, first of all defining the application scenarios. So we can say we can identify type of devices which can be used for sensing the sounds from the human body. So if I say that this device, this heart sound analysis that we need to perform in hospitals, then we can choose a different types of devices which will have a less constraints means or more advantages. So therefore, I categorized this sound sensing and monitoring scenarios into four, and one is biomedical data computing platform. There we sense the sounds and then we try to compute for extracting set of features from the sounds which are coming from the sensors. So based on that, we can classify the biomedical data computing platform into wearable device computing, portable device computing, smartphone device computing, home-centric computing, cloud computing, or we can say hospital-centric computing. So why do you want to have this type of categorizations, or we can say groups? By seeing this group, we can understand their limitations. So wearable device will have limitations like battery power. Portable devices, still the size of this portable device is much bigger than the wearable devices. So therefore, we have options to have a more battery powers. Similarly, smartphones, even though we have a long time battery power as compared to the wearable devices, but this device smartphone is extensively used for some other applications also. So therefore, we can understand the challenges or constraints of this type of devices when you want to compute or when you want to extract some set of features on the devices. So if you say that home-centric computing, then there is no issue related to the battery power, because that's always the server is connected or bedside monitor is connected to the power plug. So always energized. So to highlight the limitations of each of these devices, I just grouped into here 5, that in terms of device computations. Similarly, in terms of health monitoring strategies, we can have 3 groups: supervised health monitoring, semi-supervised health monitoring, and supervised health monitoring. So if you take examples of sound analysis, you visit the hospitals, the doctors often use the stethoscope. It is called auscultation device, which is used to perceive the sounds produced by the human body. In particularly, they use this type of devices to sense, to understand or analyze the heart sounds produced by the heart valves, or we can say heart organs, or sometimes they used for sensing the lung sounds, sometimes they used for sensing the bowel sounds. Now, if you see this type of sounds, which are highly non-stationary as compared to other biomedical signals like ECG signals and PPG signals, which have a morphological informations where we can visualize and we can remember the shape of each of the waves of the electrocardiogram or photoplethysmogram or some other biomedical signals. But if you see this type of sounds, very difficult to what is called visualize or understand, or we can say we can train the human brain systems that yes, this is this type of disease, because such a highly non-stationary signals are complex signals, particularly the sounds of the sounds which are generated from the human body. So supervised in the sense that we use a devices, and then we also use the sensors to acquire sounds, and then we use a set of equipment and measurement equipments to extract various parameters from the sounds, from the variable parameters from the sounds, acquired sound signals. So it's a completely supervised in the sense that then the parameters will be given to the experts, and then the experts will recommend for different types of treatment process or different types of medical drugs. So that's called completely supervised health monitoring. That means experts intervention is required completely. We can say 100% interventions are required for analysis of different physiological sounds produced by the human body. So in the semi-supervised healthcare monitoring, that in some applications, we can still relay with the systems to predict different type of arrhythmias by extracting the various sound parameters by using signal processing techniques on the device, or we can say on the smartphone. So it provides only few parameters. The signals will not be given, and only few parameters, and also it suggests what type of disease related to this type of clinical parameters or clinical indexes extracted from the sounds of the human body. In that case, we can say that semi-supervised, that we can say 70% instruments are used for extracting a variable parameters, or you can say clinical parameters or clinical indexes from the sound signals. But in the case of unsupervised healthcare monitoring, it's completely without interventions of experts, that it will sense and it will immediately provide the treatment or therapy or control mechanisms to activate some kind of a drugs to the human body. So that is called completely unsupervised healthcare monitoring. So why do you want to have this type of classification in terms of health monitoring strategies? That to understand the difficulties and constraints which are involved when you talk about the continuous long-term health monitoring. So we have to go for unsupervised healthcare monitoring or semi-supervised healthcare monitoring. It's not the supervised, because again it will increase the what is called time process, or we can say latency in the diagnosis of the various sounds which are coming from the sensors and delivered to the doctors. So next is patient monitoring strategies. So we have seen the health monitoring strategies with respect to the doctor interventions. Now, with respect to that, how much the devices are available with the doctors and the patients. So one is called bedside patient monitoring, which is completely controlled environment health monitoring system, okay, in hospitals applications, where the doctors can continuously sense the signals, acquire the signals, and extract the various clinical parameters, and also can understand the emotional conditions of the patients or other reactions of the patients. So then we can provide them accurate treatment for the bedside patient application scenarios. But in the case of remote patient monitoring, even though the signals are collected by using a high quality sensors, but the sound signals are corrupted with other background sound sources. The body sources are corrupted with the other background sources. So it is very difficult to what is called understand what type of sounds coming from the bodies or other background sound sources. That is one of the challenging in the remote patient health monitoring. In addition to that, we do not know the emotional conditions, other reactions of the patients, which are most important when you want to do diagnostics of your patients remotely. Okay, so that is one of the other challenge in terms of patient monitoring strategies. Then biomedical data sensing strategies, which we are seeing nowadays, that contact-based physiological sensing. So you will find there like a cloth garment. It will be placed on the chest or it will be placed on the stomach, and that will continuously sense the signal and wirelessly transmit to the smartphone, where the smartphone acts as a data aggregator and then will extract various sound parameters and indexes for further diagnosis. And also it will transmit the high quality signals to the doctors. So that is called contact-based physiological sensing, and the monitoring is based on the interface with the smartphone, where the smartphone will act as a data aggregator and also a data computing platform. But in the case of contact-based physiological sensings, we use non-contact sensors, in particularly elderly people health monitorings, or infant health monitorings, in particularly sensing heart sounds. So we like to prefer the contact-based sensors instead of contact sensors. But as compared to the contact sensors based signals, there are many challenges that involved in the contact-less, because sometimes you can see the literatures or past clinical studies, the most of these contact-based sensors will have a limitation in extracting wide variety of clinical parameters as compared to the contact-based signal sensing mechanisms. But only thing is, it is not compatible, but contactless is more compatible for the users. It will continuously sense in a non-contact manner, but it has a limitations that it cannot able to produce or acquire or capture all fine variations, because such a sensors are not available in the research. So that's why there is a limitations in extracting number of or wide variety of sound parameters and indexes from the body in the case of a contactless based physiological sensing monitoring systems. So these are the few applications you can understand how the smartphone is used for sensing the heart sounds, or it can be used for sensing the lung sounds, how this small strip is used for sensing the, again, it's kind of a strip, a kind of a small kind of a suit or cloth. It is to sense the chest sound, how the smartphone is used for sensing the snoring sounds. Okay, but this type of classification is most important. From this, we can understand their limitations of each of these groups. So now coming to what in by edge computing and on-device computing. So we have seen that nowadays there is a wrist-one devices, so which is used to sense like ECG signals and photoplethysmography signals, in particularly measuring the pulse rate or the heart rate, blood pressures, and SpO2. Okay, so these are the few parameters can be sensed by using wrist-one. So there we sense the signals by using a contact sensors, and then we'll extract only these few parameters. Okay, where few parameters on the device itself, then it will display the readings of your pulse rate, glucose level, blood pressure, and respiration rate, and SpO2 on the device, and also transmit to the cloud for further diagnosis. So these are called on-device based clinical parameter extractions. So now we have to consider the constraints of this type of wearable devices in terms of the battery power and other processor speed. So that's one of the limitations when you want to develop or to provide intelligence to the users by extracting the different biomarkers or physiological parameters from the signals on device. So edge computing is the next level of computing platforms where we can say the smartphone can be one of the example for edge computing, because the smartphone has a very high-speed processors and others what is called facilities in the case of wireless and heterogeneous wireless networks, and also good display and high-resolution displays and the storage capacities. So therefore, we use this type of body wearable devices to sense only for sensing the signals and then transmit to the smartphone. As I mentioned, that smartphone will be used as a data aggregator, and then the computations will be performed by using powerful signal processing techniques as compared to the lightweight signal processing, which we want to explore for extracting only the pulse rate and the heart rate, respiration rate, and blood pressure and SpO2. But if you want to extract some more clinical parameters, or you want to identify various kinds of arrhythmias or various kinds of murmurs, then we have to use some high what is called advanced signal processing techniques, which requires more computational resource as compared to the computational resource required for only pulse rate and heart rate measurement systems. So therefore, we can use a smartphone where we have quad-core processors and at least better battery power, long-time battery power, if you assume that the device is not extensively used for some other application. Otherwise, if one can argue here, yes, this device is extensively used for some other multimedia, where we can also consider, we can also see that is the limitations. If you see the overall lifetime of the smartphone will be comparable with the wearable devices, because this smartphone is also used for other applications. So if you compute overall energy consumptions and then overall lifetime, which will be just comparable with the on devices. So that is the limitations of this. But however, so small portable devices can be used as a we can say PDA as a for extracting all high quality parameters and clinical indexes from the high resolution signals. Now, what are the advantages of edge computing or on-device computing as compared to cloud computing? So one is if you look at the edge computing, cloud computing platform, that if you see that all the devices are enabled with Internet of Things, it is continuously sense, analyze, and transmit a signal to the cloud. But if you see the survey of Internet of Things, they say that billions of devices will be connected to the cloud. So now, if you say billions or 10 billions or 100 billions, if you say, but you can understand that how much the traffic at the server of what is say feature extraction server, we can say clinical diagnostic servers. So sending the signals, then extracting the parameters and providing the treatment, it will increase the latency. So if you can do all type of computational in terms, particularly extracting all these parameters and on a device, then we can reduce the latency. Second thing is that the privacy and security. So transmission of the signal, biomedical signals to the another cloud, we have to ensure the security. And so it is vulnerable to different attacks, and one can change the biological data, or one can change the settings of the wearable devices. One can change the what is called particular patient's database in the hospital management system. So therefore, if you can do this type of computations on your home healthcare monitoring environment, which is not connected to the global networks, and similarly edge computing platform, which is not connected to the other global networks. So that is also one of the main advantages of going for on-device and edge computing platform. But challenge is that how much accurately we can provide the treatment, that is one of the challenge. But if you assume that cloud-based system can provide the accurate diagnosis of various kinds of human diseases, particularly cardiovascular diseases, lung diseases, then we can say that yes, similar algorithm, if we can implement on edge computing platform or on-device computing platform, and then with a low energy architectures, then we can say that we can also able to provide the same accuracies as compared to the cloud-based healthcare monitoring systems. Then communication failure, network coverage is one of the challenges. We cannot ensure, very difficult to ensure that network coverage. You will not find their coverage of a network in particular locations when you want to continuously monitor from a remote locations. So similarly, communication failure, even though network coverage is we can find, but communication failure is one of the challenges in a different environment. So therefore, it demands a robust and reliable communication technology, particularly cloud-based healthcare monitoring. Then bandwidth and mobile network UTS cost is also very high. Treatment cost also will be very high. Then battery life, in the case of a continuous transmission of a high resolution signals to the cloud, in particularly sound signals require much higher sampling rate as compared to the other biomedical signals. So that also incurs higher energy consumptions for the wearable devices or wireless communication devices. So if you look at different types of bioacoustic signals, and we must understand what are the signal characteristics. So without understanding this type of signal characteristics, we cannot propose some kind of, we can say, efficient and effective. Okay, effective in the sense of accuracies and the robustness, and efficiency in the terms of, we can say, processing time and the energy consumption. So we cannot propose if we do not understand this type of, if we cannot understand the characteristics of different bioacoustic signals produced by the human body. Each of the bioacoustic signals of the human body will have different characteristics, but which all come under this category. So therefore, we must understand this type of signal characteristics. Deterministic and random signals are to be studied in signals in system course or digital signal processing. And then stationary and non-stationary signals, in particularly all the sounds, bioacoustic signals produced by the human bodies are non-stationary signals. And then we must understand what in by ensemble statistics and temporal statistics, where when you want to use an array of microphones to sense your heart sound signals, then we can explore some kind of ensemble averaging to increase the signal to noise ratio, which is well studied in the literature. And sometimes if more sensors are not available, we have only one sensor or a single sensor, then we have to explore some kind of a temporal approach for smoothing out the various kinds of background sound sources. And then we must understand what is strictly stationary and strongly stationary, and weakly stationary and biased stationary, and in more particularly that quasi-stationary signals, which leads to a short-term analysis of your biomedical signals, and then cyclostationary signals. So if you see the research studies, you will find that there is something is called test of randomness. How do you check the randomness of the signals? The best way to test the random signal is the number of zero crossing, or we can say the turning points. If you compute the number of turning points, then we can say how much is the randomness of that signals, particular signals. So one example to show it here, I have taken a speech signals. Please understand the speech also used for a pathological applications. So there is a one unvoiced sounds, and sometimes there is and then we find voiced sounds most of the times when you speak. So voice sounds looks like, which is examples for quasi-stationary signals, which is well studied in the speech signal processing. And then unvoiced sounds looks like this, the spectrogram looks like this. So you will find that based on the number of zero crossings or the turning points within this observation interval, we are able to tell that which sound is more highly stationary, or say randomness in the signals. So similarly, if we see this heart sound produced by human heart systems, there is a sound S1, that's the lap sound to the closer of the aortic and pulmonary, and then tricuspid and mitral valve. That's empty valve and aortic pulmonary valve, S2 sounds. So you'll find S1 lap, S2 dap, and then there is a space, then again S1. So it looks like for a normal cases, you will find this is a repeated patterns, that S1, S2, S1, S2. Therefore, this is a good example for cyclostationary. One can argue here, why do you want to understand the concept of quasi-stationary and the cyclostationary? So if you understand what is meant by cyclostationary, we can really understand what type of nature of a spectrum that we can see in the Fourier domain or any other time frequency domain, or whether shall we use a linear predictions in particularly long-term predictions or a short-term predictions. So to understand that, or to choose what type of signal processing tools which can be effectively used for this type of biomedical signals, then we must understand whether will it follows the quasi-stationary, or it is a completely non-stationary, or it is a cyclostationary. This is another example for a cyclostationary is a ECG signal. But if you look at the heart sound signals, you sometimes will find a murmurs, like unwatched sounds in the speech signals. Here also we'll find some kind of a murmurs, the turbulence, a bad flow. So this murmur has a different type of arrhythmias. So we do have a very high frequency components as compared to the LAP1 and L1 and L2 sounds. So we must understand stationary, non-stationary signals, quasi-stationary signals, cyclostationary signals, and monocomponent and non-stationary signals, which is very interesting that when we want to estimate the instantaneous frequency from a signals, because we know that instantaneous frequency is one of the best features to discriminate different kinds of signals. And sometimes we want to understand what will be the frequency of it. We use the SIRP signals to see what is the instantaneous frequency. And then instantaneous frequency is one of the best features in the case of a classification of different sound signals. So if you see, that is computed only for the narrowband signals or narrowband non-stationary signals. But in realistics, you will find a multi-component non-stationary signals, which includes the multiple narrowband within the spectrum of your heart sound signals. Let us assume that heart sound signals varies from 10 Hz to 1000 Hz. So you will find the concentrated spectrum, we can say the spectrum of S1 and S2 and S3, S4 between 10 Hz to 150 Hz with the maximum energy. And then you will find a 250 to some 700 Hz within that 0 to 1000 Hz for your murmurs. So now two localized spectrum we can see for the heart for a spectrum of your phonocardiogram signals. So now if I want to study the instantaneous frequency for the heart sound signals, particularly S1, S2, S3, S4, and then we must be able to separate the murmurs from this analysis. Okay, so similarly, there are many cases we'll find them multiple spectrums with a non-stationary behaviors. We can say multiple narrow spectrums within the spectrum of a particular sounds. With the spectrum of a particular sounds. So we pass this type of signals through some kind of a narrow band pass filter. Then we'll try to extract the instantaneous frequencies. But recently, you will find many signal decomposition techniques were proposed, in particularly empirical mode decompositions, which is most widely used to convert this type of multi-component non-linear signals into a monocomponent in this type of non-stationary signals. Then they'll try to apply Hilbert based envelope feature extractions or instantaneous frequency extractions and phase extractions. So therefore, understanding the type of signals, or we can say characteristics of each of the bioacoustic signals, are most important in selecting various types of features. Before moving to various signal processing techniques which are used for analysis of heart sound, I would like to highlight here that the extractions are in particularly waveform delineations is most important in most of the bioacoustic signal analysis. Because if you really see the clinical studies on the various sound signals produced by the human organs, and which are having some localized characteristics, localized characteristics. And the intensity and the frequency, durations, and the shapes are mostly widely used for diagnosis of different type of diseases. So therefore, we must develop some kind of activity detection techniques or waveform delineation techniques, or we can say sound delineation, or we can say sound segmentation techniques. The function of this segmentation process is to determine the boundaries of various local sounds present in the signals, bioacoustic signals. Then if you can extract the each of the sounds from the bioacoustic signals, then we are able to compute all kinds of intensity parameters, duration parameters, shape parameters, frequency parameters for extracting various kinds of sound clinical parameters and clinical indexes. So as I mentioned that we use the multi-channel single channels, and also we can see signals. We'll find the S1 sound, S2 sound, S3 sound, S4 sound. Each sounds reflects some function of the heart, okay, heart valves. And also we can see the murmurs. That murmurs can occur the duration of the systolic, and the murmurs can occur the duration of the diastole also. So murmur can occur early and late and mid. So the timing parameters of the timing of the murmurs are most important. So it's called mixed segments. So one is called mixed segments or mixed events. I can say murmur is one event, and S1 and S2 lappant sounds the another. Fundamental heart sounds are another event. Within the murmur, we have other segments also, okay, in terms of timing. And sometimes mixer of events. When I try to sense a heart sound signals, and we can see the presence of the lung sounds because of the sensing modality, similar sensing modalities. So are similar kinds of sensors. And then we have to separate this type of sounds. When you try to sense the bowel sounds, abdominal sounds, we can sound the sounds of the fetus, or we can sound the sounds of the maternal, or we can say mother also, or our sounds also, heart sounds. So therefore, we should have some kind of a sound source separation techniques. So that's called mixer of sounds. Okay, one is the mixed. Mixed in this means it's not a mixer; it's isolated events. Okay, it's isolated events. So now, for extracting this type of isolated events, waveform delineation is most important techniques. What do you mean delineation? Delineation is the process of determining the boundaries of each of these isolated events, in also to know what is the amplitude of this. So if we can extract all these parameters, all these local events or isolated events, then we are able to extract various time domain feature parameters, which are most important in most of the clinical studies. And peak amplitude ratio, in particularly S1 by S2 ratio is most important for diagnosis some kind of disease. And then duration ratio, yes, systolic to diastolic duration also one of the important parameters in the shape and the quality of the sounds. Then similarly, frequency domain parameters to understand the split events of the S2 sounds in rarely S1 sounds. Then shape parameters. So therefore, the waveform delineation is most important, but which is very challenging. And sometimes we will find that most of the researchers, they like to use this type of machine learning based techniques to what is called identify or classify different type of diseases, okay, or classify different type of sounds, abnormal sounds. But where this we extract various kinds of features in the time domain, frequency domain, in terms of statistical features or information theoretic features. But it may use it may be used machine learning based techniques are useful for some set of diagnostic purpose, not for all the cases. Where the amplitude ratio is most important, duration ratio is very important, frequency parameters are very important, then we cannot get this type of information accurately by using machine learning based techniques. So therefore, we have to follow the approach of waveform delineations, then extracting the time domain parameters, because the time domain what is called signals, time domain particular isolated events has more information than this type of high level features which are extracted by using various signal processing techniques. So I just want to highlight, see that is the science behind our digital life, which is the signal processing. we cannot skip the signal processing even if when you talk about deep learning. Okay, so there are many places still signal processing is becomes assistive for means empowering for even for deep learning approaches also. So let us one of the examples is spectrograms. Okay, so enhancement is one of the applications of the signal processing detections. As I mentioned, detecting the murmurs present in the heart sound signals. Then localization of the events are most important. Then classification of different type of murmurs or different types of vowel sounds also most important. Then predicting different type of diseases based on the past features or previous features extractable. Then data reductions, which are most important for energy efficient transmissions, which is also challenge. Without distorting the clinical features, we have to we have to identify the signal processing techniques to achieve a higher compression ratio. Then assessment of the quality of the signals, which are most important because we are going to use different kinds of sensors. So we do not know the quality of the signal which are sensed from a high quality sensor and low quality sensor I'm talking. Okay. So if you look at all these signal processing techniques which are based on this type of signal classifications, we can choose any one of the signal processing techniques. So starting from the time domain, transform domain, filter bank, wavelet to transform, empirical wavelet transform, empirical mode decompositions, variational mode decompositions, sparse signal decompositions. But all these signal processing techniques which are required to analyze this type of signals, and we have to know how to find the optimal design parameters. We cannot escape this finding optimal design parameters for any kinds of signal processing techniques. Even though we write the limitation of the filter bank is this as compared to wavelet, but still wavelet has some limitations. So the limitations will be carried forward everywhere. Okay. So then computational complexity and power consumption is most important things that we need to consider when you want to propose any kinds of signal processing techniques. Let us assume that I used variational mode decompositions and empirical mode decompositions, but both methods. Let us take empirical mode decompositions achieves accuracy of 98%, and variation mode has a 96%. So now, if you look at the energy consumptions, variation mode is much less as compared to the empirical mode and also latency. Then one can decide that the 98, 96 is good. So therefore, if you want to compare different kinds of signal processing techniques in particular sound analysis, and we must also compute we must also measure the computational or we can say to perform computational complexity analysis and also power consumption analysis. So as I mentioned that there are different kinds of murmurs, and therefore we need to develop a delineation methods, or we can say delineation techniques, which can accurately estimate the start and the end point of each of the sounds. So as I mentioned that the heart murmurs are generally categorized by the timing, which is called early systolic, mid systolic, late systolic, and pan systolic, and also intensity, durations, pitch, low, medium, high, quality, and also safe configurations, increasing intensity, decreasing intensity, increasing then immediate decreasing intensity. So these are the different what is called score or rating, which are used in the analysis of a heart murmurs when we display the heart sounds in the hospitals. So similar parameters we want to extract. So if you want to extract these type of parameters, then the delineation is most important as compared to the machine learning based or feature based or deep learning based techniques. So why do you want to go for delineations? You can find here the loud S1. Okay, finding of this loud S1 is a mitral stenosis. So that means what? How do you say that it's a loud S1? So based on the intensity, okay, we have to say. But if you say based on intensity, then we should have metrics to measure the intensity. So that is possible only in the time domain. So then widely split, which also reflects some kind of cardiac conditions, and then reverse splitting, variable intensity, and then soft and absent yes, A2. You can understand now. We have to extract S2 sounds from the PCG signals. Then we have to see the split. We have to perform the split analysis of aortic and pulmonary. aortic and pulmonary. Then we can find the different type of clinical conditions. Then loud S2 and loud P2 was a pulmonary hypertension, increasing splitting of S2, early A2, mitral regradations. So now you can understand that the importance of waveform deletions, or particularly sound deletions, which is going to provide the boundaries. Then we are able to accurately extract. Then we can extract, we can measure these type of parameters. Then we can correlate with the different type of cardiac conditions. So as I mentioned that this is one of the examples where we can see the durations. So S1 to S2 ratio, one of the parameters. Similarly, the ratio of the diastolic to systolic durations also another parameters. So in the analysis of diagnosis of heart diseases. So these are the different pictorial representations to understand the significance of deletions. So where I want to highlight that it is very difficult to get this type of features from this, because intensity variation is slightly, but we do not know how much these feature-based techniques, in particularly combined with the machine learning, deep learning, able to accurately capture these small variations in the intensity of the S1 and S2. So that's one of the challenge if you want to go for machine learning based techniques and deep learning based techniques. Yeah. So therefore, we like to say that let's go for a waveform delation, get the boundaries, then we can extract wide variety of time domain parameters, frequency domain parameters, which can extendedly used for various kinds of disease diagnosis. So as I mentioned, early systolic murmur. How do you know that this murmur occur in the early systolic or in an early portion of the systolic if I use machine learning? One way is that let's go for a overlapping concept of a machine learning techniques. Take a small segment analysis and try to get what is it, but that is not going to give exact timing of this sounds. And also it will increase the time complexity of the algorithm, because we have to go through the overlapping mechanisms to identify this type of early systolic, late systolic murmurs. Okay, so but if I know the waveform deletions, then I can exactly know the timing of the murmurs, whether it's early or mid. With that timing, I can able to classify. But challenge is that we have to completely understand the type of signals to be processed. So that is a challenge that we required extensive knowledge about the signals and their normal parameters and their pathological conditions also. Then only we can able to develop effective delineation framework for this type of sound analysis. In addition to that, we have to consider the energy efficiency, but these are the examples where we can correlate the timing of the murmurs with a different type of disease. So therefore, we like to propose in this way that one is heart sound deletions, then perform a heart murmur detections, and by using different type of signal processing, then we are able to extract all type of parameters. If we can extract this type of parameters, we can be able to develop, we are able to create a various clinical indexes for different type of cardiovascular diseases. And if you look at waveform deletion framework in the literatures, you'll find various approaches are based on the envelope extractions. So the envelope can be extracted in the time domain. Envelope can be extracted in the wavelet domain, S domain, Hilbert and homomorphic envelope. So in the time domain, absolute energy, Shannon energy, third order Shannon energy, Shannon entropy, trigger energy, Shannon energy in the case of wavelet, third order Shannon energy, and also Shannon energy in the S transform and instantaneous amplitude. So I listed everything which are available in the past studies. So now you can understand that how much effectively means this type of delineation framework can be used for this analysis, S1 and S2, S3, S4, and also systolic murmurs, diastolic murmurs, continuous murmurs, clicks and snaps and speaks, and similarly systolic pulse interval, diastolic cardiac cycle period. You can find nowadays the heart sound signal also combined with ECG to extract the blood pressure, because where the envelope of the heart sound is used as one of the features for measuring the blood pressure. So various time domain features are extracted in the case of machine learning based techniques. I'm talking in particularly heart sound segmentations and heart sound signal delineations, fundamental S1 and S2, specific heart sound detections, heart murmur detections, heart murmur classifications, specific heart murmur detections, and S2 split detections, normal, abnormal, and PCG based biometrics, and specific heart sound parameter extraction. These are the different methods which are reported for different types of applications. Okay, so where you can find that each of the researchers are focused for different applications. But you will find all these applications, these type of features are extracted, and those features are listed here. And one is time domain feature extractions, particularly amplitude parameters, then zero crossing rate, entropy, and statistical features like skewness and kurtosis, spectral features and spectral centroid, then similarly spectral and harmonic feature extractions, particularly MFCC and LPC. LPCs are most widely used for this. So this is the one of the study that we want to show how do you use this type of features for analyzing different type of sounds produced by the human body. One of the sounds is wheezing sounds, another one is the heart sound signals. So now ST magnitude features, short-term magnitude features. So it's a quasi-stationary property which we follow, and then short-term energy features and zero crossing features. Each of the features has some limitation and advantages. So you will find here that in the case of magnitude features, and we are able to separate murmurs and S1 and S2, which provides the best accuracies for the noise-free signals. For the noisy cases, you will find that the level of the noises which we can see in the past period will be very high. Then the symbol thresholding approaches will give some kind of a noise segments such as heart sound segments and murmur segments. But in the case of energy, we can reduce that small varying small amplitudes, okay, small noise amplitudes, because the energies and nonlinear functions which provide more attenuation in terms of I'm saying magnifications. Okay, if we draw a curve of energy as compared to this linear curve. So, and also zero crossings also visible for understanding, but you get number of zero crossings for the actual sounds will be S1 and S2 will be medium as compared to the number of zero crossing which we can see for the past period. So now, which cannot be effectively used for this type of wheezing sounds signals, but I just want to demonstrate that there are applications where we can explore this type of time domain features for detecting the endpoints of each of the sounds. And also, as I mentioned, that if the signal is characterized with some kind of a noises, so you can find that autocorrelation function features can provide the best accuracy in particularly detecting the S1 and S2 sounds. From this envelope features, we can understand that autocorrelation features can based sound activities detection methods can provide the best accuracy as compared to other feature-based methods. So now, in addition to that, if the previous slide shows that the application of a different time domain features in determining the start and end points of each of the isolated events in the signals. But here we want to explore this type of features for sound registration application, because you are getting a number of sounds from the human body. You want to identify what type of sounds. It is a heart sound, or it's a lung sound, or it can be a tracheal sound, or it can be a snoring sound, or it can be a bowel sound. So now we can also extract this type of features, particularly features from the histogram. We can say statistical features, mean, variance, skewness, kurtosis, higher order moments, all the median mode parameters. You will find most of the approaches based on the skewness and kurtosis. We know the meaning of skewness and kurtosis. If you try to plot to them histogram, or we can say distribution of the heart sound signals, and then you can understand that based on the distributions, we can able to discriminate the heart sound from the lung sounds. We can discriminate the heart sound from the lung sounds in some application, with some cases. Okay, that is a challenging in the research problem. Okay, so now if you see that mean is a center of the amplitudes, we can see how concentrated at the center or variance. So sometimes both the distributions will have a zero mean. Then there is no meaning of a mean statistics. So then variance. So it's a dispersance of the values. So you will find here it is more concentrated as compared to this, but as compared to this, and this is more concentrated. So in this way, variance can be one of the statistical features to discriminate the sounds. Then skewness. Skewness is nothing but that the symmetry of the distributions, whether it's a left skewed or right skewed. Some sound will be left skewed, some sound will be right skewed. I'm talking about the different body sounds, but within the sounds also, the isolated sounds will be skewed left or right or as center. So we can use for discriminating isolated sound within the acoustic signal, or we can discriminate a different type of acoustic signals also by using this statistical feature, which can be extracted from the time domain. In some applications, some accuracy, but one can transform the signal in the frequency domain. Again, we can extract this statistical features, okay, which are called higher order statistics. So Cortesis defines that how much this flatness of this distributions. Then by this Cortesis values, skewness values, we are able to discriminate different type of isolated sounds within the acoustic signals. Similarly, we can do the discriminations in different type of acoustic signals. So as I mentioned that in the previous one, it's performed, all the statistical measurements are performed in the time domain. Now we are going to see the application of this same statistical parameters in extracting in the frequency domains. Why do you go for the Fourier spectra or frequency domain? In some applications, we can see, let us take a heart sound signals. As I mentioned that phonocardiogram signals includes heart sound S1 and S2, S3, S4, and similarly murmurs. S1 and S2, S3 are localized in one portion of the signal, lower side of the heart sound spectrum, and the murmurs are upper side of this. Now, one can separate and then perform the statistics, which can further. So that means which are not separable in the time domain, even though it's a mixer or a mix in the time domain, but which is separable in the frequency domain, assuming that the different type of acoustic sounds are what is called having a non-overlapping spectra, or isolated sounds of the same acoustic signals having a non-overlapping spectra. But in the time domain, it's a mixer. So therefore, we explore the spectral representation of the signals where we can separate. Then again, we can perform this type of statistics for discriminating different type of isolated sounds within the acoustic signal, and also various kinds of acoustic signals are collected from the human body. You can understand. See, this picture in itself shows that yes, it is separable. It is the statistics parameters can be useful for discriminating of this type of sounds. But how much accuracy, that's a studies. Okay. So now you see that various kinds of spectrogram we studied. This is the spectrogram of the heart sound signals. This is the spectrogram of speech signals, and this is the time frequency spectrum, which I taken this again spectrogram I have taken for heart sound signal. So now, if you look at that, some extension, the sounds are mixed with the various kinds of noises. In addition to, we can see the murmurs here. Okay, so this is the heart sound without murmurs. This is the heart sound with murmurs. So now, what we have done in the conventional methods, that we use a spectrogram. Spectrogram is nothing but what is called estimating the spectrum for a short duration signals. Then we have converted into 2D representations, the time versus frequency. Then the color indicates the magnitude of the each of the frequency component at a particular time. So that is the representation of a spectrogram. Now we extracted various features from this spectrogram. Okay, or we can say Fourier spectra, and that is called spectral centroid, spectral spread, spectral flux or a delta spectrum, spectral roll-up, spectral flatness, spectral entropy, and spectral band energy ratios, and spectral band periodicity. So which are used as a features with the machine learning and to identify the different type of heart sound signals, abnormal and normal heart sound signals, or different types of murmurs. Okay, so or discriminating a murmurs from the heart sound signals, or classifying normal and abnormal. One of the popular research in the heart sound analysis, normal and abnormal heart sound recordings, classification of normal and abnormal, or detecting the murmurs, as I mentioned in some of the slides. But now you find that the group of researchers highlight that these are handcrafted features. Okay, so they say that instead of extracting this type of features from this type of spectral representation, I'll use spectrogram as the input for this type of conventional neural networks or deep learning techniques, and the system will decide a set of features to accurately classify different type of murmurs. But in all the cases, please understand that the collection of a databases, which must include variety of all the sources. Variety of sources is very important. In the sense, different kinds of murmurs at a different locations of the sensors from a different subjects and different age group, different centers. So if we do not have this type of databases, then the limitations of R, we can say the accuracy of any kinds of a deep learning or any kind of machine learning will be questionable. It may work for that kind of databases, but you will find there is a small increasing in the accuracies as compared to the traditional approaches by extracting the features and by using combined with the machine learning. So therefore, we in all the cases, both the applications, both the what is called approaches, what is the traditional machine learning approach, we can say GAN graph features, and there I can say engineered features. This is nothing but it's what is called we can say dark, we can say block, something feature extracted by the networks and try to see that accuracy. But in both the cases, the collection, the wide variety of database is most important, which for a different kinds of sounds, particularly hard sounds. So that's the limitations. So these are the expressions to compute these type of features, but still you will find there are researchers, they combine this type of feature with the 1D convolutional neural networks and to divide this. So here we explored how to use this type of frequency domain features to perform the delineation, of hard sounds. So these are the envelope which are extracted by using STFT features, and then by seeing this envelope, we can understand there are some features can provide the best accuracies as compared to other features, like a spectral flux. We cannot get much better accuracy as compared to other spectral based envelopes. So we have seen the time domain features for delineations and the frequency domain feature based delineations. But in addition to that, in all these envelope extraction based methods, finding the threshold is most important. So how do you find the optimal threshold parameters for the signals having a varying S1 and S2, S3, S4 amplitudes and also hard murmur amplitudes? So therefore, we can find there are research group, they try to use this Hilbert, what will say phase envelope, phase envelope of the hard envelope, energy envelope or spectral envelope for finding the start and end points. So now any one of this envelope methods are used to get this envelope, whatever we studied, we have seen in the previous slides. And this is the envelope for a filtered PCG signals, which includes only S1 and S2 and S3 also. So here only some kind of a murmurs you can see. So the envelopes by using any one of this is here Shannon entropy envelope are extracted, which is a time domain. Then for this envelope, the phase value, instantaneous phase was constructed by using these expressions, and because since it's a real values, we try to get the complex, which is called analytical signals. Once we get the analytical signals, then we can compute envelope from instantaneous phase from this analytical signals. Z of n is equal to x of n plus j x cap of n, where x cap of n is nothing but Hilbert transform of this envelope. The Hilbert transform of envelope can be computed by using a DFT in the DFT discrete Fourier transform. And then once you get this envelope, you can find that some values, particularly this is 1.74 minus 1.74 to plus 1.74, and some value of this one, you'll find it's starting up this way, and this plus 1. Close to plus 1.7 will be the endpoint of this. So now, by taking this one, we are able to accurately determine the start and end point of each of the isolated sounds of the phonocardiagram signals, where we do not have a threshold mechanisms. Okay, most of the cases it will give the best accuracy as compared to the threshold-based techniques, where you can find that you see here, if I use threshold-based techniques on this envelope, there is a chance to miss this type of low amplitude sounds. But in this case, still we are able to get the start and end point of this low amplitude sounds present in the PCG signals. So now, as I mentioned that once you perform a hard sound delineations, and then we will extract the hard murmurs. How do you extract the hard murmurs from the hard sound signal? And also, how do you separate some of the artifacts which are introduced by the microphone. So therefore, we explored some kind of stationary wavelet transforms or techniques also, and you will find the stationary wavelet transform is used for what is called extracting this type of baseline drift that can be seen in the heart sound signals due to the sensor movements. Then one can construct the two candidate signals. One is the murmur candidate signal, candidate murmur signal, candidate heart sound signals. So once you get this candidate murmur signal, heart sound signals, then you can apply envelope feature, envelope extraction techniques. Then you can use this phase, instantaneous phase, to detect this one. Once you detect this phase, you project on this, then you can remove some kind of high frequency components of this S1 and S2. Then we are able to, you can see that you are able to extract this type of murmurs which are present in the signals. So now you are finding a techniques which can accurately determine the start and end point of the sounds. Similarly, the amplitude, maximum amplitude, and also start and end point of this type of murmurs. So once we are able to extract this type of murmurs and these sounds, then we are able to extract various kinds of time domain parameters, including amplitude, duration, and the shape parameters. So these are the techniques which are used for analysis of your heart sound signals, and which are listed here. And I have taken from the literature survey. You will find all kinds of your signal decompositions are explored for analysis of your PCG signals. All kinds of your classifiers, machine learning techniques are also explored. Even the recent techniques of your time delay neural networks or convolutional neural networks and time growing neural networks, all other hidden Markov model, and also Gaussian mixer model with MFCC features also. So now we have seen the the components of heart sound signals or PCG signals, and we have seen set of signal processing techniques which are used. And also I have highlighted that waveform delineation is most important for accurate and effective diagnosis of various kinds of cardiovascular disease. So now we can see another sounds which is called breath sounds, which is also one of the sounds these are the sounds that come from the lungs during inhalations and exhalations that can be heard during auscultations. So this includes set of you can say parts of the. This one is then there are different type of abnormal sounds. We can say abnormal breath sounds. There are normal breath sounds. I just highlighted because understanding various kinds of breath sounds is most important, because each of the sounds will have a different intensity parameters and the frequency parameters and the duration parameters. So now if we do not know this type of parameters, then very difficult to choose the signal processing techniques. Therefore, you are finding that a few slides completely highlighting the signals and their characteristics. Then once we know the type of signals and their locations or the site where we are sensing this type of sounds, then we are able to choose the signal processing techniques, okay, which are based on the previous slide which I listed here. So three categories of lung sounds. One is breath sounds, then adventitious lung sounds, then transmitted voice sounds. So in the case of adventitious lung sounds, you will find chords of crackles, fine crack, we can say fine crackles, coarse crackles, medium coarse, and there are many other abnormal sounds. So you can find the normal basic sounds, trachea sounds, chest wall sounds, then adventitious sounds, chest wall and trachea mouth, which are called lung sounds, respiratory sounds. Sometimes we can call it as a breath sounds. So now, based on this, as I mentioned, the frequency information which are reported in the literatures here, low pitch, high pitch, then mouth sounds. Basically, we are talking about the breath sounds. Then vesicular sounds, which has the frequency from 100 Hz to 1 kHz, energy drop at 200 Hz. Then broncho-vesicular sounds, then intermediate between the bronchial and the vesicular breathing. So now you can understand where is the vesicular, where is the bronchial, orchial, tracheal. So this anatomical structure is very important, because so if somebody, the sensing part or measurement site or a sensing site is most important, because the location of the sensing site will decide the type of background physiological interferences or the other sound interferences. Okay, so that information has to be incorporated when you want to develop any signal processing techniques. If this is the sensing site, then we can know, yes, this type of sounds would be the background sound sources. So then tracheal sounds 100 to 5 kHz, and then energy drop at 200 Hz. That can be pictorially represented in some of the literatures. And that adventitious lung sounds includes the whizzing sounds, crackle sounds, and Ronge sounds. That is, you can see how the spectrum of whizzing sounds. As I also shown in the previous slides, whizzing sound, it covers the entire spectrum, but sometimes you can see that you can say structured components. We can see the structural components, or some formants can be seen. Okay, some harmonics can be seen in some of the lung sounds. Okay, not all the lung sounds. So that structure, formant structures and harmonics can be explored for identifying this type of lung sounds. So these are the characteristics reported in this papers. That is respiratory sounds, American Journal of Respiratory Critical Care Medicals, and this can be used as a reference. And then based on this, we can develop any time frequency analysis techniques. Then there is abdomen sounds, which is called bowel sounds, which are also one of the physiological sounds. So bowel sounds derive from a vibration waves caused by contractions of your gut walls, propelling the intraluminal liquid and gas. So when you see the gut, this is a digestion time. Sometimes you can sense the sounds, you feel with a high intensity. Sometimes other people can also sense. That's called radiations. Okay, other people can also sense your bowel sounds, but even you will sense your bowel sounds. It's a what is called reflection. So now, why do you sense this type of bowel sounds? What are the clinical relevance related to various kinds of disease related to stomach? So particularly this intestine. So there are different sounds which are abdominal sounds, which are called noise made by the intestine. They may be described by the following words: gurgling and rumbling and growling and high pitched. So you will find hypoactive bowel sounds, hypoactive bowel sounds, or hyperactive bowel sounds. Hypoactive bowel sounds, hyperactive bowel sounds. Like we have seen normal sound, abnormal sound in the past, particularly murmurs and S1 and S2, S3, S4. Similarly here, hypoactive bowel sounds and what is called hyperactive bowel sounds. Similarly, the lung sounds we found what is called adventitious sounds, and there is a lung sounds which are called abnormal sounds. Yes. So now, for all this sound analysis, you'll find this set of parameters are used. One is L equivalent continuous sound level and power spectrum and linear prediction coefficients or code methods. So these are the three features are used for diagnosis of this type of snoring sounds. Particularly, we are talking about snoring sounds that so sleep related breathing disorders and upper airway resistance syndromes. And so here, obstructive sleep apnea syndromes are also diagnosed by listening a snoring sounds. So we have seen the lung sounds. It's also related to respiratory sound, but it's a snoring sound. So you will find the snoring sometimes. You will find the snoring sometimes harmless, but the loud snoring sounds, which are called as more than 80 dB, or they say 60 to 80 decibels. So which are harmful for we can say related to some kind of pathological conditions. So therefore, we can use snoring sounds for diagnosis of this type of, or we can say we can use as an indicator sleep-related breathing disorders and also upper airway resistance syndromes. And similarly, we can say that obstructive sleep apnea syndromes. So we can use snoring sounds, and you will find there are many devices available for snoring sound detection and classifications. And most of these computations are performed on the wearable devices, or you can say a smartphone, which are called example for edge computing. So mechanism of snoring, how there are opened upper airway and closed upper airway. So this is also very important to understand. Okay. So you will find vibration of different parts of the throat produces different types of sound during snoring. Snoring is a respiratory sound which are called noises which originates during sleep. So can be what is called a nocturnal, or you can say, particularly here we can say habitual snoring is a quite common signing up to 60% of adult male populations. Okay, but there are what is we can say based on the intensity, which is the 60 to 80 decibels, then which are need to be treated. Okay, so particularly for obstructive sleep apnea syndromes. So which are called a heavy snores disease is defined as a progressions from heavy snoring to obstructive sleep apnea syndrome. So that is based on the intensity parameters. So there are different scales, maps used for classification of the snoring sounds. And also the snoring are classified into nose-based snoring, mouth-based snoring, tongue-based snoring, and throat-based snoring. Out of this snorings, the throat-based snoring is related to the sleep apnea, which is most important, which need to be considered for diagnosis of various kinds of sleep apnea diseases or obstructive sleep apneas. And this various studies shows that visual analog scale, snoring severity score, and spouse or bed partner survey, snoring outcome survey, snoring symptom inventory. So these are the different type of methodologies used as a subjective what is called rating mechanisms for a snoring sounds. But there are we cannot, which is time expensive, which is not accurate also, because some kind of cognitive skills or knowledge is required when you want to provide the answers to this type of subjective questionnaires. So which are called visual analog scale, snoring severity score, spouse bed partner survey, snoring outcome survey, and snoring symptom survey. Because both are sleeping, because you will find always this type of snoring symptoms during the sleeping. So sometimes it is annoying for a other partner or somebody, but we cannot expect that other people can give you this type of sounds, because other even in a bedside hospital, or you can say hospital also, so one has to sit continuously to provide the rating for this type of snorings. But we have to develop some kind of a signal tools which can measure this type of apnea hypopnea index AHI. Okay, so which is rated in this way, that less than 5 is normal, 5 to 15 is a mild sleep apnea, 15 to 30 is a moderate sleep apnea, and greater than 30 is the severe sleep apnea. There are methods to compute this AHI, and then we can understand that this snoring can be used for what is called identifying various health problems, including the decreased blood oxygen levels, because it's related to the breathings. It's related to breathings, as I mentioned here, nose-based snoring, sometimes blocking airway. Some try to what is called made some sounds in the nostril stiffness. So that sound says that yes, he is not able to what is called take the sufficient air. So that's also related with this type of oxygen, blood oxygen levels. Then difficulty in concentrating, particularly when you say mouth-based, in some kind of infections you can see, if they are not able to take a proper breathing through the nose, and then they also, you see, somebody will produce a tongue-based snoring also. So, so these are the different type of snorings, and which are related to this type of health problems, heart attack, high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes 2 also. So now, based on this sounds, and they developed some kind of a snore map based on 4 energy sound types. And type 1, monosyllabic low frequency snore. Type 2, tubeless low and mild frequency snore. Type 3, tubeless low high frequency snore. And type 4, triplets, it is low, mid, and high frequency snore. So this is already reported in the literatures. You will find this studies on energy types of snoring sounds in patients with obstructive sleep apnea syndrome. And they found that based on this spectrum, they made it type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. So one can develop a accurate frequency estimation techniques or spectral estimation techniques. Then we can be able to say type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4. And each of this type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4 also relevant to different types of disease related to the obstructive sleep apnea syndromes. So if we just want to highlight that, they try to demonstrate that a simple snore have a peak intensities, because the frequency information is very important. So I'm just highlighting it is from 100 to 300 hertz. And for this syndrome, sleep apnea syndrome, obstructive sleep apnea cases, you will find above 1000 Hz. So in some studies, you will find the AH value is greater than 15, and then snoring intensity is defined by objective measures is often very high, reaching 60 to 90 dBA. So now you will find that there are many systems are developed to acquire snoring sounds where they design a filter with 70 to 200 Hz, which is also very important to choose their suitable sampling rate. Then based on the nature of this snoring sounds, as I mentioned, the sound is a highly complex signals. Okay, sounds are highly complex signals. We can classify simple snores. Vibration of open airway leads to a simple waveform snores, and then complex snores, which we can say complex in terms of a non-stationarity. It's a momentary closure of the airway produces complex waveform snores. Okay, so to classify simple snores and complex snores, we have to use some kind of signal processing techniques. Even though there are many scales available for subjective ratings, and also many scales available based on the objective ratings in terms of frequency, and we must be able to understand what is simple snore and complex snore in terms of a complexity of various kinds of snore sounds. So now there are some studies focused on classifying this brief sound episode into snoring and non-snoring sound segments. I just highlighted to know what is the recent study in the field of snoring sound classifications. So you will find that there are temporal features, spectral features. What are the features as I have discussed? These are traditional features. And there are formats also expected because we have seen some sound cases, some formats. It's not for wheezing. Okay. So now they are able to identify snoring sounds and non-snoring sounds. So now you can understand that in a noise-free environment recording, the classification of the snoring sound, non-snoring there is no much challenge. But if you go to the realistic case or real-time deployment in a room where you have AC and you have a fan, other musical instruments playing outside the room, and then you can see the presence of so many background sources, sound sources. So we need to develop what is called accurate and effective signal processing techniques, which can provide a robust, accurate, what is called classification of snoring and non-snoring sound segments. Therefore, this type of research is still a challenging task under the realistic scenarios. In a different home, you'll find a different background sound sources. If somebody is living in the forest area, you will find a different background sound sources when he is sleeping in the outer environment. Once a person is sleeping in an indoor environment, even though mobile phone is used as an assistive technology, edge computing platform, but the challenges are separating of this type of background sources in the indoor and outdoor. Within the indoor itself, there are a number of sounds that are created by the human or man-made sounds. So this is RNN-based classification of snoring sounds. So there they try to get this activity detections by using any one of the envelope detection which we discussed in the previous. Then they try to consider different types of non-snoring episodes like voice, deep breath, music, silence, other TV shows, footsteps, and water running, and similarly other sounds are also considered. And then they extracted short-term Fourier transform, spectrogram, and also MEL spectrum. These two are used as an input to the RNNs, particularly they used NSTM, and then they try to compare the accuracy of the traditional machine learning based techniques with this LSTM based techniques. And they try to prove that based on the smartphone and the number of subjects they consider is 8, and they got it 98.9, 99.8, 97.3. Again, I want to mention that this is for this database, they achieved it because the collection of wide variety of background, outer environment, indoor environment, itself one of the challenges. Okay, so therefore, any kinds of machine learning or any kinds of what we talk nowadays is a deep learning, the creation of a databases, which includes wide variety of sonor sounds across variety of subjects, okay, in terms of age group, in terms of genders, in terms of geographical locations, and similarly in terms of different background noises. That's one of the challenges. So these are the studies reported in this paper that we used all kinds of recent machine learning techniques and deep learning techniques, and we reported the accuracies unweighted average recall rate. You find it is much low. It is just below 75%. So you will find that yes, there are challenge in developing automated sonoring sound classification methods. This is the RNN. You can see deep CNNs with this feature PCC. What is that MFCC features, and then you can find only 72.6%. Okay. So these are the various kinds of signal processing techniques we can further explore with this deep learning based techniques approaches. With the same data set, we can try to show, yes, this performance is comparable with this. But if you want to make a generalized one, so we have to concentrate on a selection of various kinds of, creation of a databases by considering different type of sound sources, indoor and outdoor sound sources. Any kinds of body sense which we sense by using microphone or some other sensors, which are always sensitive to, susceptible to, are prone to the external sound sources also, or any kinds of other physiological interference that need to be separated. So with this, I conclude my presentation. So if you have any questions, I will take up now. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful talk. I hope the participants have gained wonderful knowledge using this talk. And now I'd like to invite the participants for the question and answer session. So is there any questions from the participant side?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, basically, we know that for image classification, if we use transfer learning based model, that gives high accuracy if the data set is low. So
Yes.
here actually for lung sound classification, if the data set is low, we are applying some transfer learning technique by converting the time domain signal into time frequency version.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then we are some
Just want
raise
to-
method
Yes,
basically
please.
for transfer learning.
Yes. So
But
if
sir,
you
accuracy is not.
when you just answer to the database low data set in the sense, for a one, at least for a one events, we should have at least one. Correct. So
Yes,
we are talking about a variety of human subjects and variety of different kinds of shape of the people, lungs and the heart organs. Okay. So that is the one of the main challenge. For example, if it is a music, music is well designed by a person. Instrument is well defined, well designed. So I can have one data set. I'm not talking about the repetition of a same sounds for n number. I'm talking about it's a coverage of all the possible murmur sounds and other physiological sounds produced by the different kinds of subjects with the different anatomical structures.
yes, sir.
So now we cannot say transfer learning can capture if I do not cover in my database, which is some kind of sounds which produced for a different hormonal type.
Yes.
So what they are trying to see this type of deep learning based techniques, they try to use a spectrogram or a scaleogram or a Mel spectrum as image features, and they'll try to extensively extract the features from this spectrum where they are saying that we missed it, that we are not able to get the fine detailed features which are present in the spectrum, but the deep learning, transfer learning, whatever the learning techniques which are proposed recently, they are saying that they are able to capture. I'm talking about that. If with that case, you can achieve better accuracy for that database. But if you want to develop a complete system, when you want to analyze the sonoring sounds in an indoor and outdoor, let us consider only indoor application itself. The indoor applications has a different type of sounds, background sound sources. So if some signature of that background source is not incorporated in the database, at least one or two segments, then we are not able to make it what is called unsupervised way of classifying without knowing the actual features. Yeah, that's the one I want to highlight, that wide variety of sounds with pathological sounds, similarly wide variety of background sound sources, which are most important if you want to discriminate one from one sound to another sound. It's not the repetition of the sounds of repetition of the same sound. In the sense, some subject will have the small variance in the hard sound also. But in such a cases, if that feature is not incorporated in the databases, or then we cannot say that we may get the accuracy, good accuracy for any kinds of machine learning based techniques also. Yeah, any doubts?
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Any other questions?
sir, suppose we have uh, a recording of various sounds. Then if we want to identify that if someone is affected from any disease like Parkinson's disease, then how we can identify that this voice is affected from Parkinson's disease and another sound is not affected from that type of disease? How we can identify, sir?
No, I have not discussed any Parkinson's disease here. I can say sleep, this obstructive sleep apnea disease. So your question is related to what do you want? How do you?
I am saying that I suppose we have lots of collection of voices, and in that voices there is two category. One is normal sound, and another one is one kind of disease. Suppose we are taking Parkinson's disease. So how we can identify that this sound is affected from Parkinson's disease and others are not affected? Means normal sound.
That's why I'm saying, say there are two approaches. One is what I mentioned that what traditionally people say engineered features, or we can say handcrafted features. Then another one is just to use what you say, you convert that sounds into a spectral domain where the spectral domain has much information, particularly sound I'm talking. The spectral includes much informations, and so they use spectrogram or ML spectrum, or they use any time frequency representation spectrum. They combine with the deep learning networks. They'll try to identify whether it is Parkinson's related sounds, or I'm just taking example of your question. Otherwise, I see snoring or non-snoring. But in all the cases, it is up to us that whether the developed system is applicable for indoor and outdoor. I'm talking about that research challenge problems. So deployment problem is most important actually. What application scenario you are developing? That's why I highlighted in the first slide itself. Application scenario will decide the challenge of any of the techniques. If I say that I want to deploy snore, non-snore event detections in indoor applications and or outdoor applications, then the challenges are completely different. So that's why in that cases, if I say that I want to use it for indoor applications in a particular room environment, I just say I'll go with some kind of a sounds produced by fan, other ACs, and other surrounding sounds. Or somebody focus with the microphones, what we say, directional microphones. It can sense only sounds produced from that human subject, not from other surrounding areas. So therefore, depending on the application only, we can say challenges of any kind of automated what you call diagnostic systems. So one cannot, I can say, I always say we cannot provide a complete solution for all kinds of disease analysis in all kinds of application scenarios. That is very difficult. That's why I told you it's wide variety of collection of a database. So your question, can we distinguish between asthma patient with the normal persons when both the persons in normal situation? Because yes, people have explored this type of sound analysis. Yeah. Yes. Even cough is also one of the signals. So if you go to hospitals, they last time also doctor asked, do you have any kind of a system which can count the coughs and do the analysis of your cough sounds? So we can use it for analysis. I missed most of the sounds also. There are sneezing sounds. There are many sounds, but I focused with only few sounds here. So all the cases, what I want to conclude here, we have to define our problems that are we going to develop here, because we are talking about the sounds, body sounds. So with respect to the body sounds, I will say, are we going to develop a system for smartphone based system for outdoor applications or indoor applications? Within the indoor applications, I have to define whether I'm going to detect only the hard sound, or I want to detect only the murmurs, or I want to develop a system for completely describing all type of murmurs. So where we can find various kinds of difficulties. So that's called research challenging problems. So I always say that one deep learning cannot give a complete solution of any kinds of diseases, which can be deployable in the any kind of application scenarios. Okay.
Sir, thank you for your input.
Yeah.
One more question is from one participant, Naseem. He asked that can we distinguish between asthma patient with normal person when both the person are in normal situation? Because in this situation, asthma patients also looks healthy. Can you provide some input?
No. See, what sense we can say, it is very difficult to, that's a biomarker extraction is one of the point I put it in my slide, first slide. Always there is a biomarker. So the sound analysis, it's also type of one of the signals which can assist to identify many kinds of this type of respiratory problems, lungs problems. Okay, but if some extensions if we are not able to do means there are one reason our sensor is not able to pick up that biomarkers. So therefore they will go for imaging technology. Then therefore they will go for there is what is called invasive techniques. For example, my case itself, I just went for hospital for a checkups, and there was some small defects in the lungs. Then they said that we can do it in a non-invasive, but they are not able to identify. Then they will go for invasive. They insert through nose. They inserted the camera video, and then they try to capture the function of the lungs, and they try to get this information. So it is how much essential information that can be captured by that sensor. That's why I told one of the objectives that is also the way of sensing, whether we are going to use non-invasive sensing sensors, invasive sensing sensor. Each of the sensor will have some limitations, and each of the sensor will have some applications to capture some specific features. So in this way, so there are some extensive applications you can find asthma patients based on this type of respiratory other sounds also. But it is not that exactly both the persons are in normal situations. Means always there will be a what is that in medical no. If you tell too many to doctors, they'll tell why you are correlating with everything is not similar. Any kind of disease, if you see symptoms are looks like a similar. So we cannot say that the person is normal. Yes, problem with the asthma, but our sensor, our biomarkers not able to reflect it. Okay, so that's why they will go for a second diagnostics as imaging diagnostics, or then they will go for an invasive. So if they are not able to do with a non-invasive techniques, they'll go for a invasive techniques. So that's a different scenarios. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, sir, for
Thank
this nice session, and I hope participants are benefited from this particular talk and the knowledge regarding this domain. And I hope you will be connected in future also with us also regarding this type of lectures and invited talks. So thank you very much, sir, for giving your time from your busy schedule.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank
Can
you
you take
for
a screenshot? All the participants can turn on the video. So
thank you for the
screenshot.
coordinator and also the participants. Yeah.
Please turn on your videos. We can have a screenshot.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
This talk. Yeah. So the sessions closes today's sessions. So we'll meet tomorrow for the third session of this short-term course. So if you have doubts and any suggestion, then you can let us know. Otherwise, we can close the meeting formally. Okay, it seems that there are no suggestions.
Can we
So we
get
can-
a recording of the session in same day?
Same date is not possible. Next day we can upload it on YouTube, or we can upload it some server, and then we can provide the link to you.
Sir, in our WhatsApp group, can you share recording and PDF also?
How recording will come? It will take a lot of space, right? So we are trying to upload it somewhere, and then we'll try to provide a link. So by tomorrow, it will be possible to provide today's sessions videos, or the basically recordings. But PDFs we cannot guarantee. We will ask the speakers to provide their PDF. If they will agree, so that we will provide the PDFs for those respective sessions. But we cannot promise for all the sessions. Although we'll try for getting all the PDFs for all the sessions.
At least today's PDF, if trying, sir, then that
That's
will
what
be very
I'm
much
telling.
helpful for us.
We will request the speaker. If they agree to give, we will definitely share it with you. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah. Fine. So we'll close the session. Thank you all.